I'm going to first just begin by saying how much I loved the episodes. I thought it was such a wonderful. I think you have this wonderfully sort of very disarming quality, so kind of inquisitive and willing to just kind of listen. And I think it's such a great. It makes for such a kind of lovely entry point. I think into the
Thank you.
the series. I thought it was really great.
Thank you.
I'm going to start by asking about going back to the kind of genesis of this project. Were you sort of approached with the idea? Did they say to you, right, we'd love to do this? Or was it something that you sort of came up with the idea and you thought, I'd love to go and travel there, and took it to them?
So years ago, I got the gig to do the islands of Britain because somebody else dropped out, and they waved it under my nose. And I thought, I loved the idea. So I went and did that. But it wasn't a buffalo thing, that. And I kind of wished it was, because otherwise you have to sort of entertain a notion of other people's version of you, if you know what I mean. And that's why I should I'm happiest doing these factuals through Buffalo when it's sort of my gang. Not because I want control in any way. I just want to make sure I get my version of me and somebody doesn't have Anyway, so after that, we got a call from that performed well in Australia, and then we got a call from a production company in Australia to say, do you want to come and do the Islands of Australia as a co-pro? So we went and did that, and then back to ITV. That went well. Well, what about the Islands of America? Yes, they said, that did well. Then the island thing, and I'm clinging on to clinging onto this rock with my fingernails because I love doing it so much. But that's the island theme. So the Atlantic theme, because we ended up doing two because of COVID, of the islands of the Pacific, and then the Atlantic seemed like the next big one, and it certainly was. The variety is extraordinary. Do you not think?
Yeah, no, that was one of the things that really sort of took me by surprise, really. I mean, each episode felt like you could have been on completely different planets, never mind continents.
Yes. Yeah. Whereas, other islands, like a palm tree is a palm tree is a palm tree, and they kind of look the same or have similar, issues and problems to deal with. But yeah, this is off the scale.
Yeah, because I've never wanted fame, which is quite handy because I've not got very many talents. But I've always wanted to be successful enough in my dreams so that I could do a travel show like this, or maybe just be asked to go on Desert Island Disc. They're the two things that I'd love to be famous enough to be asked to do. But it must be an amazing perk and experience, I suppose, to kind of having grafted and been an actor and been in so many sort of projects across your career, that it has kind of lent itself now to these really kind of soul enriching experiences.
Soul enriching is really good description. Yeah, I mean, really extraordinary good fortune and such a gift to receive, and to sort of try and be able to share. That's sort of the plan. It's not that I stand and David Attenborough can tell us what he knows about these animals. I don't know anything. I'm just inviting the camera over my shoulder. And my approach is to make the contributors feel at ease so that they give us their best and tell us about what we're looking at. But it is, it's the most amazing way to travel because the access you can get. I've interviewed Sheikh Mohammed, bin Salman out in Dubai, and just because we did a bit of research and planned it and turned up with a crew, just amazing access, really amazing access.
And on these travels, does it feel an almost smaller place now for you as well, would you say?
No, it doesn't, because it makes it bigger because I know what's tucked in all these corners. And I must say, it's really sorted out I can now get a picture of where everything is in a way that I don't think I could before. There's still localities I know nothing about, but I know that, the Atlantic's on one side of America and it has the Pacific on the other, and Australia has the Pacific and then the Indian. And that's kind of your way around the world in oceans.
And in all these kind of travels you've done on all these different islands, has there ever been a place you've been to where you've just thought, I could actually live here, or you've even just thought I'd like to? Have you ever returned to any of them just purely as a kind of tourist due to your experiences you've had on shoot?
I haven't since doing an island thing, but when we went to Barra in the Outer Hebrides on the islands of Britain, I had been there before because I directed a film called Staggered up there. where I met my wife. Not in the Outer Hebrides, but the job was where I met my wife. But I don't think so. I'd been to Madeira before we went to Madeira, but I would dearly love to go back to Madagascar because I always had a thing about Madagascar before I went to Madagascar. Ever since I was a kid, I had an interest in the word, almost beyond showing an interest in the island. But it was just one of those things that stuck in my head, and I've been there 3 times now working. But I absolutely, it didn't disappoint. It's the most amazing place I've ever been, I think. Well, yeah, it was already in my heart, but it was nice that it didn't disappoint, if you know what I mean.
Is there anywhere still on your kind of hit list of any nation countries you still haven't been to that are quite high up on your must see list?
Well, you know, if and to be honest, I don't know if there'll be another Islands of series. That seems to be the nature of television at the moment. Old white men aren't really, you know. Anyway, but I would love to go to. I know nothing about Scandinavia really, any of the Scandinavian countries, and there's some beautiful islands around there. Or the islands of the Indian Ocean, which would get me back to Madagascar, the Maldives, Mauritius, Sri Lanka, all of that.
I went on my honeymoon to Sri Lanka and just had the
Oh God, isn't it gorgeous?
food. I mean, for
Oh,
starters, but the people as well. It's got this wonderful, because what I love when I go on holidays, I love this kind of balance of doing nothing and being on a lovely beach with that kind of very picturesque landscape, but also being very active and doing stuff at the same time. And Sri Lanka is quite a small country, and you can have every bit of your trip you want, every type of holiday you want is all condensed into this kind
yeah,
of.
that's so true.
I loved it. I'm actually going out for Sri Lanka meal tonight. Actually, I'm very
Oh,
excited.
are you? Oh, will you have that dried fish curry? I love that for
Oh yeah,
breakfast.
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And
string.
I was going to ask too, because you obviously your build. What you have to do is it's not just about the places you go to; it's also about the people that you get to meet along the way. I just wondered if you've ever kind of stayed in touch with anyone that you've kind of encountered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I have. Yeah, lots. Yeah, lots along the way. And in although it wasn't an island, but we were filming. We filmed in Nepal, and in between us filming there and the program going out, that awful earthquake happened. And I was trying to get Dinesh, his name is the guy who was our fixer out there, who I'd stayed in touch with, trying to get hold of him the whole time, saying, "You okay? Are you okay?" And for 2 weeks, all their comms and infrastructure was down. And then we got through, and then the program was about to go out with a section in Nepal, and I called. It was when Peter Fincham was at ITV. I said, "We've got to put something on at the end," and they go, "Whoa, well, charity, we can't be seen to be, you know, ITV very nervous." So I went on Lorraine and gave out my email address and said, if anybody wants to, you know, lend a hand, we're going to send some money out to Nepal to help them. They needed to build shelters because once all the villages had been leveled by the earthquake, the next thing that was happened was the monsoons were coming, the typhoons and monsoons were coming in, and they had no shelters. But in these villages, they also, before the earthquake, had no schools. So Dinesh's idea was that you build these shelters to shelter them through the monsoons, and then once they've rebuilt their villages, they can keep the shelters as schools, and that's really worked. And a lot of it was from Clunetics in America who sent lots of money, and we were able to send quite a chunk of money out. And then, with what was left over from doing that, we put a girl through car mechanic college because girls struggle with education out there. It's not often offered to them. So yeah, I've stayed in touch with that. I've stayed in touch with Yoya from Ecuador, who we worked with a couple of times, once in Ecuador and once in Galapagos. And yeah, you just sort of collect people along the way. Some stick, some don't.
I think last time we spoke, we sort of touched upon this, but I was interested to know because obviously when we spoke, that was for Out There, so you're very much playing a character, so you're kind of cloaked in this kind of role where they're almost like a shield, I suppose, in some ways. And I just wondered, as an actor and as someone who has such a kind of a great career taking on different characters and different kind of personas, can it be quite vulnerable sometimes to be yourself on screen and just be to have it's Martin Clunes traveling around the world rather than a character? I mean, is that a different sort of what's that like, I suppose, for you?
No, it's sort of become okay. I wasn't sure about it when it started, but I've done a few of these now, and like I said before, I do see the primary role is putting the contributor at ease, so that they can, do their best and give the program their best. But I don't know. I find it really refreshing contrast to acting. In the, but it's still sort of hanging around with cameras, which I love, and the people who work them. But I don't have to wear I don't have to change my clothes multiple times in the day, or have any of that going on. And I look a bit of a munter half the time, which doesn't matter. Doesn't really matter because generally the camera's looking over my shoulder. But no, I find it a really a lovely complement to my other job, if you know what I mean, as a means of income.
And we mentioned sort of touched upon it right at the start about the kind of the very rich sort of tapestry of life and different cultures in the Atlantic islands. Were you quite surprised by what you encountered in that regard? Were you expecting it to be quite as different, I suppose, as
Well, it's sort of not until you reach the end can you sort of, do you know what I mean? Put the whole salad together and dress it. You can't sort of see it because it's a series of things that we've been through in the research and the tasks and getting in the transports and the travel and the machinations of it. But and those islands off under that bulge of Western Africa, I didn't know that was a kind of Portuguese enclave in the bad old days, and I'd never heard of any of those islands before or since, apart from Guinea-Bissau as a territory. But then reaching the end, and you go, wow, look where we've come from those palm trees and the palm wine to these icebergs, and what happened to us there. We go, the weather. You're at the mercy of the weather, and we had a couple of internal flights just cancelled there because they don't have long enough runways. That's the most unusual place I've ever been, and weirdly, it's the biggest island on the planet. But its longest road is 50 kilometers.
I mean, you mentioned palm wine there, and it's interesting. It's funny whenever you try and connect places all around the world, wine seems to be the one thing that's sort of in all of your episodes. It always feels like wine was the kind of recurring theme. And I've always thought that when I've travelled to places, it's like one thing that I always think binds us together. We all like a drink.
Well, I guess so. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But then but also there's a bit of social history with wine, isn't there? Because the grapes came from here, there, and whatever kind of crossed over at different times. God, I don't know quite how they got to Tahiti, but yeah.
And what would you say on this series in the Atlantic Ocean island? Sorry, what would you say is the best thing you ate? Was there one specific dish that really stood out to you in all the different meals you had?
I could tell you the opposite. Was I tried a bit of whale, and I didn't like that. But it sort of felt daft not to, if you know what I mean. Don't know why. But golly, I'm just trying to think. No, I can't think. I can't think. Loads of fresh fish, obviously because you're islands and fish, etc., etc. But I can't think of anything. A lot of it was sort of Portuguese dishes, and I'm sort of okay with Portuguese cuisine. But
I love the whole kind of tea section. I realised actually when you were there, I knew nothing about it. I drink it every day. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Did you not go to a tea plantation in Sri Lanka?
Actually, no. We did. We actually did actually, but I was kind of. It was very much It wasn't one that you kind of pay for like a tour. You just kind of walk around and see it happen.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't actually have any kind of dialogue with anyone who kind of.
Oh, we did the tour. My wife and daughter were like, and I was like, and my eyes were on stalks because it's such a. It's an essential part of my day, tea. And when I go making these things, me and Richard Rankin, the cameraman, he's got his. I can't. remember what the name of his tea maker, but he lives in the northeast, and he's got like a Yorkshire tea, and I've got my Barry's tea from Cork in Ireland, and that's my day fuel, and I passed it on to my daughter. But when I don't remember, I can't remember if it was in the program, but that lovely lady who had the tea plantation in the Azores, I. I was, I remember saying to her, I said, is everybody this excited when they come here? And she said, yes, pretty much. It's weird, isn't it? I wasn't, I like a cup of coffee too, but it's not as essential to me as tea. That's my starter into the day. I mean, just as beautiful as the Sri Lankan, but harvested in a different way by machine. So all the bushes are like shaved and kind of smooth along the top. And when you get close, you see that the leaves have been cut by the machine. Whereas in Sri Lanka, you get those ladies in their beautiful saris and their delicate hands just picking those leaves from the top. So all the bushes still look like shrubs. They don't look like they're like hedges.
And how do you, if tea's a big part of your day, how do you take your tea? Talk me through a Clunes cuppa. What's your process of making it? Are you milking first? Are you sugar? Or how do you
So
make
it's a pot,
Yeah.
about half a litre, 3 heaped teaspoons of berries. In the morning, just the tiniest pinch of lapsang, brewed for at least 8 to 10 minutes, and then a tiny bit of milk in first, and off you go. And then after 2 cups, it gets what we call a Harry topper, where I top up the pot with boiling water with half of what I've taken out, and that'll see me through. And then I've got a hot mug that I fill up with after I've had my 2 cups, got dressed. What was left in the pot goes in the hot mug, and that comes on the first dog walk of the day. This is a good day, but at the moment I'm not doing anything, so this is every single day. And then in the afternoon, I'll have that pot. But I've just recently substituted the lapsang with Russian caravan smoked tea. Just a little pinch of that in with the 3 heaped spoonfuls of berries.
I was hoping that would get a good answer, and I'm absolutely thrilled. Yeah. I'm making notes as well, by the way. I'm going to try and.
Well, I infected my daughter when she's at uni, and I keep sending her boxes of Barry's tea bags because she's just like me in the morning. I've heard her go, "Oh, Mr. Barry," and we were in Ireland the week before last. My wife and I having a little break, and we were having to put the car back in the. For the hire car before we got on the plane, but we passed Barry's tea in Cork. It was like, Mecca.
Love that. You mentioned as well about sort of taking your dogs out for a walk. Exactly. Did you miss your? I mean, obviously, one thing, obviously, like when you're on these kind of trips and you're away for quite a while of time, do you get kind of homesick at all? Do you miss your dogs? Miss your life back home?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I at expense to Buffalo Pictures. I don't go away for that long at a time. We break the shoots up rather than just leaving and then coming back at the very end. We do them in little trips, which does suit everybody, but it has an expense. But yeah, no, I don't. And because we've got the horses and the farm and everything, it's more than leaving an apartment or something. It's a business and whatever, Yeah, and crap zoo.
How are your puppies? I think when we last spoke, they were quite small. I guess they must be getting quite.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're lovely. We've been to hell and back with them, but yeah, they're really. We had a little sheep trouble with them, but I was just telling Naomi before you came on. We ended up. Murray chased a store lamb into a fence and dislocated its leg and opened it up a little bit. So I bought it off the farmer, and we had it in one of our stables and got the vet to put its leg in plaster. We named her Jasmine, and she spent a good 5 weeks in there getting better, and she's now gone to live as a pet, so for her forever home. But in the meantime, we realised because any second, they're out now. The ewes and baby lambs are out, and that would just be carnage with them because it's the 2 of them. So we been intensive training, 4 training sessions a day, each puppy separately, for 5 weeks. And now we've got the best trained dogs we've ever had. But and I'm really proud of them. But that was a scary moment.
Yeah, I bet. I was going to
Yeah.
say, if there's one of the good things about speaking to you again, and maybe hopefully just keep speaking to you, I just want to keep getting updates on how they're doing.
Well,
Yeah.
funnily enough, I had a book out at Christmas, sort of about all kinds of animals, and in I think the puppies are mentioned in it at the end. But they'd had the publisher have had a lot of feedback, and we're talking about doing a book about the puppy about John and Murray.
Oh, great. I could, yeah, I mean, I could write a Bible on my dog, to be
I
honest.
know it's ridiculous, and the videos. I was even this morning. I was like, why am I videoing them chasing each other again?
Yeah, if I have to find a photo to show someone, if I've taken a screenshot of a receipt or something, I just have to scroll through about 500 photos just taken just today. Um, but anyway, I could speak about dogs a lot well forever. But I'll go. But back to the kind of show. I wanted to ask because I had the absolute pleasure once of interviewing David Attenborough. So David Attenborough, about 10 years ago now, and I think the one thing I really wanted to speak to him about, one thing I really asked him was the how difficult it must be to kind of not be able to interfere, with kind of wildlife when he's watching something take place, when it can be an animal
Yeah,
distress or something, and whether he's ever kind of been tempted to kind of interfere. And I was like interested to know because obviously in this instance you're kind of traveling, it's still travel, it's got that kind of David Attenborough quality, but most of it is with humans, it's with
yeah.
speaking to people. I just wanted to know about where, particularly, really, I wanted to ask about the kind of whaling, the kind of takes place. And do you still think it's very important as the kind of entry point into this to very much be non-judgmental and take a step back, or do you think it is important sometimes to challenge people with views that perhaps you don't agree with?
Um, yeah. I mean, I'm not a protagonist. I mean, confrontational in any way, but yes, certainly in the Faroes, the Grind was, and I wasn't sure when I was going to be able to take it up with someone because it's so contentious. But in the end, actually, it came up quite organically with the ornithologist, who's a conservationist, and had a really interesting slant on it, as well as a license to take part in it. But I mean, he said it on camera, didn't he? He said if these organisations hadn't been quite so vehement against the cultural practice, they might not have dug their heels in and carried on doing it. But I tell you what, though, from the Pharaohs onwards, I really had to change my thinking about food and its collection because their whole life revolves around that because nothing grows except grass and they won't, people don't graze. And so, yeah, the notion, and when we were in the Pharaohs, there was a general strike. So nothing was getting off, all those things that island life needs weren't being delivered. Diesel was running out. And Darren, who just fixed everything for us just then, who's a genius, had sort of seen this coming and hired us the last electric vehicles in the Faroes. And we met an Italian woman there who still had 3 weeks of her holiday, and she had enough diesel to go 50 kilometers or something, and she was in tears. Like, what do I do? What do I do? One guy apparently tried to go and collect diesel in a bin bag. Which made me laugh. But it really distilled down what's against people on those islands, and quite why the idea of being able to harvest and store a shitload of protein, which is how they view it. But it's indefensible the way they do it. Absolutely. I mean, I'm a meat producer myself, but yeah, we make sure they're finished nicely in a abattoir with a vet. But I thought his slant on it was very interesting, and he said he didn't think it was going to last because I don't know if we covered this in it, but there's a toxin they try and stop kids from eating it. I don't know if it's mercury or zinc or something bad for people is in whale meat. I think probably because of the activities of people. But anyway, yeah, there you go. And they eat a lot of seal. But up in Greenland, they hunt the seal mainly to feed the dogs. And because we were there in the summer, all the dogs were on chains on the rocks in the outskirts. Everyone had a little patch to park their dogs. whilst they're not being worked during the summer. And a howl could kick off, and you'd hear it from everywhere in town because the whole of the hillside would be howling, just for no, because our dogs howl sometimes for no reason. But the in the summer they were hunting, and in the winter they are hunting to store and freeze food for the dogs in the winter with seal. But they eat seal too. I didn't have any seal.
And you've mentioned a couple of times, sort of wondering if certain bits are in the show or not. Do you sit down and watch it when it kind of airs? And is it quite interesting to you, even as the kind of host of the show, to see what bits made it, which didn't, and see I guess just see how it's all kind of put together at the end of the day.
Well, also to see how it's been edited, how the drone footage, slots in, and Richard takes such amazing. Directors and editors love Richard's stuff because he's always getting textures and details and things here and there, to see how that's been used. And it's like having an amazing photo album, really. And I've just been sort of refreshing my memory. Naomi sent me the links because it was a while ago we did this. But yeah, no, I do, especially these. And I think these things are about the only thing my daughter watches of the things we make.
And you mentioned Greenland as well, which I just it's the Greenland is sort of topical at the moment. Not to get kind of political, but when you visit these places and they become even more real and even more human, and you really get to know the kind of the people and the kind of earth that they kind of live on. Does it make the kind of current political climate even more difficult to grasp? And on that note, do you think this is quite important timing for this release? Because it feels like the whole world is all about kind of shutting borders at the moment. So it's quite nice to be reminded of our sort of shared humanity in some way.
Maybe you're right. I hadn't thought of it in the light of that, and the current craziness. I don't. Yeah. I mean, it is. I do feel like when they're all talking about Greenland, it's not an abstract thought to me. It's a place. I know what they're up against. I said to somebody there, I said it must be real because the midnight sun was quite curious, and when you stand and look at the icebergs, they don't move. But I did a time lapse. I think it was every 30 seconds a frame, and overnight. And you just see them all dancing around and moving like that. And the moon just shot through the sky. And saying to somebody, but, it's kind of wonderful, there's 24 hours of sunlight. It must be quite hard when it's 24 hours of nighttime. And he said it's just as hard in the summer. Just as much depression. They have a lot of trouble there. It's not easy living there, and there's not a lot for young people to do, as we highlight. Yeah. But I don't. Yeah, I mean, God knows what's going on, but yeah. But I know where they're talking about. That's all I can offer on that. I think it seems like there's a lot of interest in the rare earths, as they're calling them, aren't there? Which should be Greenland's business. But I went to Guam, which is predominantly an American military base, and the total disregard shown for the native flora and fauna there, and the people. Morning, Mr. Magpie, was pretty grim. They basically treated the island as a verge to their base, if you know what I mean. And every other business in town was a Chinese rub and tug parlor, or a casino, or a shooting range. That was quite grim, and I think it would be really grim if Greenland went that way.
Yeah. I think that's one of the great things about these kind of travel shows. I think they such you go just from the comfort of our kind of living rooms, just being able to see how everybody lives and how you find so many shared aspects of their lifestyle grown, be it tea, be it wine, be it dance, and I think they serve a real purpose, I think, in kind of reminding us of how, despite how different we all are, also how similar we are in many ways as well. So I think they're very
absolutely, yeah, and having the island theme, because all islands have similar problems, but seeing the different way different people deal with them. And how cool were that those guys in I think the Bijagos, who they were caught and sunk, and their ship had sunk, So they'd never gone into slavery, and they had that. I'm just on a Zoom. Oh, sorry. Noisy puppies. I thought that was, that's a tiny little sliver of a story that just snuck away in that armpit of Africa. Yeah, was quite something. Yeah, rather than a sort of homogeneous ranch dressing and yeah.
And sort of looking at, I don't want to take up too much of your mornings. I kind of just wanted to look ahead because obviously last time we spoke was for Out There, and I think whenever you speak to someone about a TV show, you often say, "Oh, might there be more in the future?" And often the kind of answer is, "Let's just see how the first one is received. Let's see how the first one does." And obviously the first season or first series, I suppose, has kind of been out now, and it was well received. I've had loads of friends who were kind of watching it and really enjoyed it. Have there been discussions yet for more? Is it something you'd hope to do, perhaps, to have a kind of a second series of Out There coming up in the future?
Yeah, well, it was definitely part of our plan. It always is, and we are in discussions with it. And we're but that I can't say more than that. But it hasn't gone away yet.
Yeah, I'd love to see. It's just one of those worlds you just want to kind of step back into. But the other sort of looking ahead as well is it Mother's Pride, the film Mother's Pride? Is that a film you've got kind of coming up? Is that right?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I think it's had some troubles, but yes, I did that last year. I've also earlier this year I've been playing Margot Robbie's dad in Wuthering Heights with Jacob Elordi and Owen Cooper, which was a great gig. Yeah, amazing.
It was, yeah, because I mean, Margot's such a talented performer. It must have been great to have been able to have that kind of experience working with her because she's one of those kind of performers at the moment. She just doesn't seem to put a foot wrong in every role that she kind of takes on.
She's really cool, really nice, and she really inhabits that role of producer. It's Emerald Fennell, and she's produced all of Emerald's films, and just quietly, gets on with it. And that's kind of how she was. I mean, she only had her first baby 11 weeks before we first started, first day of shooting, which was crazy. But she's really nice. And also as a producer, I was very grateful because I guess she had a part in offering, me the role, which I'm very grateful for. And it was great to do the same job that I do, but do it in an environment where there is enough time. Whether on TV schedules and budgets, there isn't.
Yeah. Well, the thing I was going to ask about Mother's Pride is not so much about the film itself, just sort of asking about you kind of doing a bit more comedy and kind of stepping back. Was that quite sort of enjoyable to kind of step back into that kind of environment, I suppose?
Yeah, I suppose it was. Yeah. I hadn't really thought of that, but yes, yeah. It was. I loved James Buckley and John O. Davis. They're my sons. in the film, and I think, this is my first grandparent as well. I'm a really sad, angry publican, and Mark Addy, who we worked together in something like 1995 in Regent's Park Open Air Theatre, and I literally hadn't seen him since, and he's been to Hollywood and back, so that was lovely to see him again. And there's some very funny disco Morris dancing in the film.
It's funny when I was at school, someone said I had the same hair as Mark Addy from the Full Monty. So and his name in that was Dave. So I got called Dave Hair for about 2 years. Luckily, the people that I called me Dave Hair, I'm no longer really in touch with. So that nickname has kind of passed.
Dave Hair. That's like the in-betweeners.
Did you have any nicknames at all? Any that you quite liked?
I'm really not sure. No, I don't think. Ed Tudor Pole used to call me Tino. That's the last one. Well, I mean, I get a bit of Clunesy, my daughter gets that too. But I don't think. Let's face it, I got called some names, but not. No, not always the same ones.
And then just very finally before I go, I just wanted to ask, because you mentioned it earlier on, I thought it was quite interesting. You said about kind of like you called it sort of like your two jobs, the kind of like the dramatic playing characters and obviously doing shows like kind of Islands of the Atlantic. Is it, do you almost see it a bit like two jobs? Do you see them as almost like two very separate things, or does it all still feel very much like under the umbrella of the same career, I suppose?
No, they have similarities, but I do see them as different things. And then there's I'm doing Have I Got News for You next week. That's a different thing too. And that's sort of a bit more like, no, it's not. And then there's the going on the one show type stuff. I don't know. Yeah, there are lots of things to do, but I do definitely, acting is so weird. That job, but there are similarities.
Well, whatever it is you do, I always very much enjoy it. So.
Oh, well, that's nice of you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!